In a dusty Georgia diner, 2025, Marcus Caldwell, 52, sipped his coffee. His khaki pants and plain white shirt blended into the background. Officer Daniel Holt stormed in, misinterpreted Marcus' wallet reach as a threat, and struck him hard across the face. Patrons gasped. Phones were out in seconds. Backup officers rushed in. But Marcus flashed his military ID, a 4-star general. Holt froze, his face draining of color. The diner buzzed with tension, yet Holt muttered a chilling threat under his breath, hinting at revenge. Marcus' future darkened. What will Holt do next? Before we dive deeper, let us know where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is one you can't miss. Marcus Caldwell sat silently in the back of a police cruiser, his wrists bound by cold steel cuffs. The Georgia dusk smeared burnt orange across the horizon. The diner's flickering neon sign grew smaller in the rearview, a fading echo of coffee and calm. His cheek throbbed from Holt's slap, a harsh reminder of how fast control can be stripped away. 30 years in the military, from an eager recruit in 1995 to one of the nation's highest-ranking black generals. And here he was, treated like a threat in a small-town power play. He'd faced gunfire in deserts, brokered tense deals with warlords, briefed presidents. Yet nothing prepared him for the sting of this moment. His plain clothes, worn to maintain discretion during a covert Pentagon mission, now marked him as just another black man in the wrong place. His mind flashed back to his first deployment, a Southside Chicago kid proving his worth in hostile territory. Every promotion had been a struggle. Every star earned in defiance of those who saw only his skin, not his service. Now, in 2025, he was in Georgia on a sensitive cyber threat assignment, so confidential he traveled solo, avoiding official vehicles. The diner had just been a quick stop, a moment to blend in. But Holt had shattered that illusion with one swing. Marcus clenched his jaw, remembering the look in Holt's eyes, not just furious, but triumphant, as if the slap was a long-awaited indulgence. The cruiser's radio crackled, pulling Marcus back. Holt's smug voice barked orders to the backup now swarming the area. Marcus' military ID, the same card that had opened war room doors, lay tossed aside on the passenger seat, scuffed and dismissed. The arriving officers had barely glanced at it before Holt declared it likely fake. The patrons, truckers, locals were stunned. Phones up, tension high. Holt's barking eventually drove most to retreat. But Marcus had noticed one young woman, maybe in her 20s, tuck her phone into her pocket with a glare of resistance. Maybe she had caught footage. Maybe it would help. But hope was fragile. Inside the diner, Holt's rage had only escalated after Marcus calmly stated his rank. The general's composed tone, trained over years of crisis, had urged Holt to verify the ID. Instead, Holt doubled down, accusing him of disruption and disrespect. His backup, younger officers with jittery hands on holsters, mirrored his hostility. They didn't see a general. They saw a black man questioning authority. The diner fell silent. Coffee cups left untouched. Forks abandoned mid-air. The white-haired cook behind the counter, apron stained with grease, watched with sharp eyes. Marcus noticed a subtle exchange between the cook and Holt, an almost imperceptible nod. He'd been trained to read a room to spot danger. But he hadn't expected the cook to slide behind the counter and discreetly knock a steak knife near Marcus's booth, its blade catching the light just so. The move was deliberate.
Marcus, gut chant.
This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup. Holt pounced on the knife like a predator, brandishing it high. "Weapon on the scene!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the murmurs of confusion. Marcus' response was calm but firm. Still, it was drowned out by Holt's accusations. The backup closed in. One officer twisted Marcus' arm, jerking it behind his back. The cuffs clicked shut. The room blurred. They dragged him out, Holt in the lead. The stunned faces of the diner crowd melted into the darkness. In the cruiser, Marcus' thoughts raced. He'd survived ambushes before, but this was different. This was home soil, and here his stars meant nothing to men like Holt. The station came into view, a squat brick building with flickering lights. Holt slammed the cruiser door and hauled Marcus out. Gravel crunched underfoot as they entered the building, the air thick with cigarette smoke and old coffee. The desk sergeant, a stocky man with a buzz cut, didn't look up from his paperwork. "Another one, Holt?" he grunted. Holt tossed the ID onto the counter. "Claims he's a general. Check it." The sergeant snorted, flipping the card like it was a cheap fake. "Stolen valor, probably. We'll figure it out." Marcus stood upright, his voice slicing through the haze. "Call the Pentagon. Confirm my rank. I'm General Marcus Caldwell, United States Army." The sergeant narrowed his eyes, but Holt leaned in close, his breath sour. "You're nobody here, pal. Nobody." The room felt tighter, the walls seeming to close in as Marcus's heart thudded. Not from fear, but from fury. The same rage that had pushed him through every obstacle in his career now surged in his chest. He'd sacrificed too much, fought too hard, to let this go unanswered. But Holt wasn't finished. He leaned in close, his whisper laced with venom. "You think that ID protects you? This town belongs to me." The sergeant nodded to the backup officers, who shoved Marcus toward a holding cell. As they passed a break room, Marcus caught a glimpse of a TV screen. Local news was already in a frenzy. A shaky phone recording from the diner looped on screen, Holt's slap frozen in grainy pixels. The ticker scrolled, "Suspect detained after diner incident." No mention of Marcus's rank. No trace of the truth. The cell door slammed behind him, but Marcus's mind was still at the diner. The cook, the knife, Holt's calculated confidence. It had all been too convenient. He rewound the scene in his head. The cook's quick movement, Holt's glance toward the knife just before finding it. It was a setup, plain and deliberate. His instincts kicked in, observing, analyzing. He had to contact General Ellis, his trusted Pentagon contact. But his phone was gone, likely already in Holt's possession. The cell's cold concrete offered no answers, only the low murmur of the ongoing news broadcast. Then came a new sound, footsteps. Holt reappeared, the cook beside him, now out of his apron, his grin ice cold. "Found this in your booth," the cook said, holding up a plastic evidence bag. Inside was the knife, now covered in fingerprints Marcus knew weren't his. Holt's smirk widened. "Assaulting an officer, carrying a concealed weapon. You're finished, General." Marcus's blood turned to ice, but his voice stayed composed. "You won't get away with this." Holt chuckled, tossing the bag to the sergeant. "Book him." The cook slipped away, and Holt lingered, his eyes shining with smug triumph. Marcus sank onto the cell's bench, thoughts churning. 30 years of service, countless operations, and now this, a corrupt small-town cop with a vendetta and a system poised to protect him. The diner incident hadn't been spontaneous. It was a trap, and Holt had lit the match. Marcus thought of his wife, Lena, and their daughter, Aisha, safe in Virginia, unaware of the storm unfolding. He had to warn them. He had to resist. But as the cell locked behind him, Holt's words echoed ominously. "This town is mine." The news droned on. The video was everywhere. The truth was buried, and his moment of control in the diner now felt like a distant memory. This was the beginning of a much bigger fight. Bigger than one knife, one cop, one false charge. It was a war against a system that had always seen him as less. But Marcus didn't close his eyes in defeat. He closed them in focus. He had faced worse. He would overcome this. But Holt's final words haunted the silence. "This is just the beginning." The interrogation room stank of damp and defeat, its pale walls pressing in on Marcus Caldwell as he sat, hands cuffed beneath a flickering overhead bulb. The station's clock crept past midnight, each tick a cruel reminder of how far he'd fallen in mere hours. Officer Daniel Holt's trap had landed him here, the planted knife now a weapon being used to destroy 3 decades of honorable military service. Across from him sat Sergeant Vickers, a stocky man with a permanent scowl, flipping through a file, his eyes filled with disdain. Marcus's military ID, once a symbol of authority and rank, lay discarded next to a half-drunk coffee mug, treated like a fake. Vickers leaned in, his voice low and filled with sarcasm. You really expect me to believe you're some big-shot general dressed like that? Looks like stolen valor to me. Marcus's chest tightened, but years of discipline held his expression steady. 30 years of commanding troops, outwitting enemies, and proving himself in a system that didn't expect much from a black man in uniform had taught him control. Call the Pentagon, he said, each word firm. Verify my rank. I'm General Marcus Caldwell. Vickers scoffed and waved the idea off. We don't call anybody. You're just another guy with a story. Holt slid into the room, his smirk sharper than the blade he'd pinned on Marcus. He's got a record now. SGE, assault, illegal weapon, resisting arrest. Knife was right next to his booth. Marcus's pulse surged, fury swelling under his calm exterior. The lie was blatant, the setup even worse. He'd seen men like Holt before, thriving off authority, seeing only skin color. But this wasn't just Holt. It was the whole station, the whole town. Vickers pushed a document across the table, a pre-typed confession. Sign this. Admit the knife was yours. Say you attacked Holt. Make it easy. Marcus stared at the paper, then looked Vickers in the eye. I won't sign a lie. Holt slammed his fist on the table, the coffee mug rattling. You think you're special? You're nothing in this town. The words echoed Marcus's memory of the diner. Holt had said the same thing after Marcus's ID had stunned him. This wasn't a mistake. This was personal. A vendetta Marcus hadn't seen coming. He thought again of Lena and Aisha, still unaware, still safe. He needed to contact them, but his phone was gone. Evidence now. In Holt's pocket. Marcus shifted, testing the cuffs, mind working rapidly. He'd managed to message General Ellis from the diner before Holt had seized his phone. If the message reached Ellis, help might be on the way. The station's phone rang. Vickers picked up, his expression darkening. Yeah, patch it through. Marcus felt a flicker of hope, brief and fragile. But then Vickers hung up, his jaw clenched. Some guy claiming to be a general, he muttered. Didn't sound legit. We're holding you until we verify everything. Marcus's stomach dropped. The call had been blocked, most likely intercepted by someone in Holt's pocket. He scanned the room, catching a glimpse of a female dispatcher through the glass. Her eyes darted away too quickly. She'd heard the call, maybe even blocked it. The web was closing in, and Marcus was the fly. Holt leaned in close, his breath sour. Your kind always thinks they can talk their way out. Not this time. The racial jab landed like a blow. But Marcus stood firm, his voice unwavering. You're digging your own grave, Holt. The officer's laugh was icy, but his eyes flickered. A small crack in his bravado. Vickers stepped in, gesturing sharply. Get him out. Lock him up. We'll handle this tomorrow. As they shoved Marcus toward the holding cell, his eyes caught a TV in the break room. The same diner footage was playing, but twisted now. A local news anchor, her voice laced with bias, labeled him a dangerous imposter who had assaulted an officer. The ticker blared, military fraud suspect in custody. Marcus' name, his image, his legacy, smeared across the screen. The dispatcher, now seated at a desk, typed frantically. Her glance toward Holt was too familiar. She'd leaked the story, Marcus realized, feeding the media Holt's fabrications. The cell door slammed. The metallic clank of the lock echoed. Final. Alone, Marcus sat on the bench, his mind a war zone. 30 years of service, from deserts to strategy rooms, and now this, a small-town precinct trying to destroy him. He remembered his first command, the whispers behind his back, the doubts he'd crushed with outcomes. This wasn't new, just uglier. But Holt's influence stretched far, and the narrative was spreading. By morning, the nation would know Marcus Caldwell not as a hero, but as a fraud. Outside, the station's lot stirred with unfamiliar energy. Chants, shouts, a growing crowd. Protesters, some holding signs for justice, others slinging slurs. Their voices colliding in the heavy night air. Marcus couldn't see them, but he felt the rift forming. The town tearing itself in two over him. The The news continued playing. The anchor's voice sliced through the cell. Authorities say the suspect's military rank remains unverified. Marcus' fists clenched. Holt had twisted truth into falsehood, and the world was swallowing it. He replayed the diner scene, the cook's knowing nod, the glint of a blade. Holt's allies were embedded everywhere. Marcus was running out of options. His call to Ellis had been a lifeline. If the dispatcher sabotaged it, he was truly alone. Lena and Aisha would see the broadcast soon. Their lives would be turned upside down. His chest ached, but he pressed the emotion down. He'd faced worse, survived ambushes, endured betrayal. Holt was just another threat, but this fight was personal, systemic, a war against his very identity. The silence of the cell was overwhelming, broken only by distant shouts. Marcus stood, pacing, sharpening his thoughts. He'd find a way. He'd expose Holt. He'd reclaim his truth. But the anchor's voice lingered, a toxin spreading. Comment number 1. If you're outraged by this injustice, hit like and subscribe to follow Marcus's fight. The truth is under siege, and you won't believe what's coming next. Can Marcus outmaneuver a system rigged against him, or will Holt's lies crush him first? The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale tension. The high ceiling did little to ease the stifling atmosphere surrounding Marcus Caldwell. 3 days after the diner incident, he stood in chains, khaki trousers rumpled, his white shirt stained with sweat, facing a judge whose cold gaze barely met his. The Georgia sun blazed through the tall windows, casting harsh light over the crowded gallery. Whispered chatter buzzed like insects. Marcus' wrists throbbed from the cuffs, but his stance was unwavering. A 4-star general reduced to a defendant in a small-town spectacle. The charges: assaulting an officer, possession of a concealed weapon, and fraud for allegedly faking his military rank, hovered over him like a dark cloud. Officer Daniel Holt's planted knife, now Exhibit A, rested on the prosecutor's table, its blade catching the light like a cruel smirk. Marcus' thoughts raced, replaying the interrogation, the sergeant's mockery, the media's distortions. His attempt to contact General Ellis had been blocked. His reputation dragged through the dirt. Now this courtroom was Holt's next arena. The judge, a gray-haired man named Harrove, leafed through documents, his expression unreadable, but his reputation was well known. Whispers around the station marked him as Holt's ally, a man who twisted justice for the town's elites. Marcus' only hope lay with Ellis, who had promised to send a lawyer after their brief, disrupted call. As the bail hearing began, the prosecutor, Claire Benton, sharp-eyed and calculating, launched her attack. This man assaulted a decorated officer, carried an illegal weapon, and impersonated a military official, she declared, her tone cutting. He poses a threat to our community. Marcus' jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. 30 years of training kept him composed. He'd faced enemy fire, hostile boardrooms, but this was different. This was supposed to be home. But here, his medals meant nothing to a system that judged him by his skin first. The crowd reacted, some nodding in agreement, others frowning. A young black woman in the back clutched a notepad, her eyes sharp with intent. A journalist? Maybe an ally. Marcus' spirit stirred slightly, but Holt's lies weighed heavier. Then the courtroom doors opened and relief surged. Lena and Aisha entered. Lena, 50, her braids pulled tight, carried the same strength that had sustained him through every deployment. Aisha, 24, her eyes blazing with defiance, clung to her mother's hand. Their presence was a lifeline, but it came at a cost. As they took their seats, a group of Holt supporters, burly men in trucker hats, leaned forward, their slurs slicing through the air. "Go back where you came from," one sneered loud enough for the gallery to hear, though not the judge. Lena's shoulders tensed, but she kept her focus on Marcus, her love, her steady anchor. Aisha's fingers twitched, aching to respond, but Lena's firm grip held her in place. Marcus' chest burned, a mix of rage and guilt rising inside him. His family shouldn't have to endure this. The bailiff called for order, but the damage was done. The divide in the room was undeniable. Holt sat in the front row, his smirk subtle yet unmistakable, his uniform pristine. A hero in the eyes of the town. Marcus' lawyer, sent by Ellis, finally arrived. A wiry man named Paul Kendrick, his suit slightly wrinkled, but his eyes sharp and alert. Kendrick leaned in and whispered, "Ellis is working on Pentagon backing, but Holt's got this town in a vice. Stay strong." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. Kendrick might be his only shot, but Holt's influence loomed over everything like a storm cloud. As the hearing resumed, Kendrick made his case, highlighting Marcus' exemplary service record, 30 years of dedication, medals for valor, briefings with presidents. "General Caldwell is no threat," Kendrick said, holding up a certified Pentagon file. "These charges are groundless, at most, a misinterpretation." Benton scoffed, lifting the knife from a clear evidence bag. "This was found at the defendant's seat. His prints are on it." Marcus' stomach turned. His prints weren't on it, he had never touched the weapon. But Holt's people had moved quickly. The cook's nod at the diner flashed through his memory. The setup, now wrapped tight around his neck like a noose. Judge Hargrove leaned forward, his voice rough. "I'm inclined to see the defendant as a risk, given the evidence." Kendrick countered, reiterating Marcus' honor and standing, but Hargrove's eyes flicked toward Holt. An unspoken alliance. Hope faded. This wasn't justice. It was a performance. Outside, the crowd had swelled. Through the courthouse windows, chants clashed. "Free the general!" Battling, "Lock him up!" Aisha, no longer able to stay silent, pulled out her phone, filming quietly. Her voice remained steady as she posted, "My father is a 4-star general being targeted because of his skin. This is America's shame." The video exploded online, drawing thousands of views within minutes. But Holt's network was prepared. Within hours, Aisha's personal information, her job, her address, was posted on hate-filled forums tied to Holt Circle. Her phone buzzed endlessly, each message a fresh stab to Marcus' heart. He met her gaze across the room. Behind her defiance, he saw the fear, and he made a silent vow to end this no matter the cost. Kendrick requested reasonable bail, but Benton painted Marcus as a flight risk. "He's got access, connections, he'll disappear." It was a blatant lie, but Hargrove nodded. His gavel hovered. Marcus braced. "Bail is set at $5 million, cash or bond," the judge declared. The gallery gasped. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. $5 million was impossible. A calculated prison. Kendrick objected, but Hargrove slammed the gavel down, ending the hearing. Marcus was led back to his holding cell, the faces of his loved ones blurring behind him. Holt's smug grin followed, a silent threat of what was still to come. In the cell, Marcus sat in silence, his thoughts in turmoil. Aisha's video had sparked a fire, but Holt's retaliation had turned it into a weapon against her. Lena would be next. He was certain of it. The knife, the charges, the outrageous bail. All chess moves in Holt's calculated game. Marcus remembered his first command. The soldiers who had trusted him. The battles he had won. This was no different, just dirtier. He would fight. Not only for himself, but for Lena, Aisha, and every black man this town had tried to break. The cell walls seemed closer now, the air thick and oppressive, but Marcus' resolve only hardened. Holt had the town, the judge, the media, but Marcus had his mind, his truth, his will. He had called Ellis, and if that didn't work, he'd find another way. The guard's radio murmured news from the hallway. Aisha's video was viral now, but Holt's lies were spreading even faster. The crowd outside was boiling with tension. A town on the verge. Marcus stood and began to pace, his heart pounding with renewed purpose. He would expose Holt, crush his hold, reclaim his name, but he knew Holt's allies were moving fast. The guard's radio buzzed again. "General imposter case escalates," the announcer said. Marcus' name was now a headline, his life a spectacle. He closed his eyes, not in surrender, but in calculation. Holt had taken this round, but the war was far from over. The air in the county jail was thick with sweat and tension, the kind that clung to Marcus Caldwell's skin as he lay back on the thin cot, the concrete wall icy against his spine. 5 days since the diner, since the crushing bail. And now he was here, trapped in a 6 by 8 foot cell, khaki pants torn, white shirt stained with grime. The $5 million bail was a deliberate prison, meant to keep him locked down while Holt's falsehoods spread like wildfire. Marcus' mind, refined through 30 years of military precision, turned every detail over. The planted knife, the intercepted call to General Ellis. The doxing of his daughter had tightened Aisha Holt's grip on this Georgia town like a vice, and Marcus was directly in her crosshairs. The cell block reverberated with shouting, clanging doors, and the low rumble of men measuring one another up. Marcus kept his senses sharp, his muscles taut. He'd faced ambushes in war zones, but this was different. Here, the enemy wore no uniform, and the battlefield was a labyrinth of steel and venom. The other inmates, a blend of small-time criminals and seasoned convicts, watched him with predatory interest. Word had spread about the general in cell block C, thanks to the news broadcasts plastering his face across every screen. Some inmates sneered, others glared, their whispers steeped in slurs. Marcus knew confrontation was inevitable. He had seen it in their stares, in the way they loitered near his cell. By midday it happened. 3 inmates, led by a massive man named R.S., confronted him in the rec yard, their tattoos boldly declaring loyalty to a white supremacist gang. R.S., his shaved scalp glistening under the sun, spat near Marcus's boots. "Heard you're some kind of war hero," he sneered. "Don't look like much." Marcus stood his ground, voice calm. "Walk away. I'm not your problem." Ross chuckled darkly, cracking his knuckles while his crew encircled Marcus. "Holt says you're trouble. We deal with trouble." That name hit Marcus like a blow. Holt's influence reached even here, her allies pulling strings behind bars. The assault came fast. Ross threw the first punch, while his cronies rushed in, wielding improvised shivs carved from plastic. Marcus' training surged to the surface, reflexes sharpened in deserts and jungles. He sidestepped Ross's swing, grabbed his arm, and wrenched it, slamming the brute into a bench. One of the attackers sliced Marcus's side, leaving a shallow wound, but Marcus twisted, driving a knee into the man's gut. The third assailant hesitated before lunging, only to meet Marcus's elbow with a crunch. Guards shouted, batons drawn. But they were too slow. Marcus stood over the downed attackers, blood trickling from his ribs, breathing hard but in control. The yard grew quiet. Inmates stared, some with reluctant respect, others with intensified hatred. The guards dragged him back to his cell, their grips rough, their muttered insults bitter. One guard, a wiry man named Kessler, lingered at the door, eyes like ice. "You're making enemies, Caldwell. Keep this up and you won't last." Marcus locked eyes with him, unwavering. "Tell Holt I'm still standing." Kessler's faint smirk confirmed what Marcus already knew. This was Holt's doing. The inmates were her pawns. Hours later, Kessler returned, tossing a disciplinary report through the bars. "You started that fight," he said flatly. "Solitary for a week. We're adding assault to your charges." Marcus seethed but said nothing. The setup was evolving, each move more calculated, more vicious. Holt didn't just want him imprisoned. She wanted him shattered, erased. The cell door slammed shut, and Marcus was alone again. The bruises on his ribs throbbed, a cruel reminder of how close he'd come. He thought of Lena, his wife, and Aisha, his daughter, their faces grounding him. Earlier, a monitored call with Lena had delivered crushing news. Their bank accounts were frozen, flagged by a local official connected to Holt. Years of savings gone. Their mortgage now in jeopardy. Aisha had been fired from her marketing job after Holt's allies intimidated her employer. She was fighting back, but Marcus' chest tightened, guilt entwined with fury. His family was suffering for his resistance, and Holt knew it. As night fell, the usual noise of the cell block faded, replaced by the faint hum of a TV in the guard station. Aisha's viral video played, her voice fierce. My father is a hero, targeted because of his race. But the anchor's reply was a gut punch. New evidence questions whether Caldwell's military record is legitimate. Marcus clenched his fists. Holt's lies were spreading like poison. Then came the sound of boots, Kessler again, too soon. He slid a food tray through the slot, eyes glinting. Eat up, General. Long night ahead. Marcus ignored it. His instincts screamed. He'd overheard whispers in the yard. Inmates bragging about Holt's connections. A network tied to a white supremacist faction called the Sons of Liberty. The name chilled him. Holt wasn't just a rogue officer. She was connected, calculated, dangerous, playing a game Marcus had only begun to grasp. Sleep wouldn't come. The silence of the cell was a trap. At 2 a.m., the lights flickered. Footsteps echoed, too many, too intentional. The door burst open. Four inmates entered, ones Marcus hadn't seen before. Their shivs gleamed in the dim light. This wasn't a scuffle. It was an execution. Marcus sprang to his feet, pain flaring from his earlier injuries. The first attacker lunged for his throat. Marcus dodged, slamming the man's skull into the wall. The second caught Marcus's arm, deep slice, blood spilling fast. Agony surged, but training took over. Marcus disarmed him, fended off the third with the stolen shiv, and landed a punch that dropped the fourth. Lights snapped back on. Guards shouted. Marcus stood, bloodied, breathing, alive. The attackers were down. Kessler appeared again, face unreadable. Lucky night, Caldwell. Won't happen again. Marcus collapsed, vision swimming, his arm wound pulsing. He had survived barely. Holt's message was unmistakable. No place was safe. As medics stitched him up, Marcus' mind locked in. The Sons of Liberty. The frozen assets. Aisha's firing. It was all Holt. A web of hate with Marcus at the center. He had fought for his country, bled for it, and now it was turning its back on him. But he wasn't finished. Lena's voice echoed in his mind, her strength, his fuel. He would expose Holt. He would protect his family. He would reclaim his name. The medics left the cell locked, and Marcus sat, his wounds throbbing, his determination unshaken. Holt's next move would be more brutal, but Marcus was prepared. The TV played on. Aisha's video drowned in misinformation. The world watching a general fall from grace. Comment number 1. If you're furious over this betrayal by the system, hit like and subscribe to watch Marcus fight back. Because the stakes have never been higher. Would Marcus expose Holt's true reach? Or would this prison cell become his tomb? The solitary unit in the county jail was a crypt, its stillness pressing against Marcus Caldwell's ears like a physical burden. 6 days had passed since the diner incident, 5 since the court appearance, and now, bandaged from a near-fatal assault behind bars, he sat on a concrete bench. The stitches in his arm itched beneath frayed khaki pants. His once pristine white shirt now hung in tatters, a reflection of his unraveling life. Officer Daniel Holt's scheme had closed in. The planted knife and fabricated charges were now overshadowed by an even dirtier tactic. Drugs smuggled into his cell during a routine sweep. Marcus's mind, razor-sharp from 3 decades of military command, pieced together the setup. The drugs, a baggie of white powder, were Holt's latest maneuver, an additional felony to bury him deeper. Guard Kessler had smirked when he discovered it. His report was already filed. Marcus's heart pounded, not from fear, but from seething fury, the same kind that had carried him through war zones and high-level briefings as a 4-star general. Outside, the world was splitting at the seams over him. Aisha's viral video had ignited a firestorm. The 24-year-old's plea, "My father is a hero being targeted for the color of his skin," had gone viral, amassing millions of views. Hashtags like #Justice for Caldwell exploded across the internet, but Holt's supporters, the Sons of Liberty, responded with venom. Doctored footage emerged, portraying Marcus lunging at Holt in the diner, a knife digitally inserted into his hand, one he had never touched. Social media descended into chaos. Half of the public declared him a martyr. The other half labeled him a fraud. Outside the jail, protests grew volatile. Supporters clashed with Holt's loyalists, who waved signs and shouted, "No imposters!" Bottles flew, sirens howled, and within the confines of solitary, Marcus heard it all, the uproar outside waging a war over his name. Lena, his wife, had called during a rare monitored window. Her voice trembled but remained firm. "They're coming for us, Marcus. Our accounts are frozen. The bank claims it's fraud. We're being evicted." Her words cut deeper than the blade from the night before. Aisha, fired and doxxed, was hiding out with friends. Her world had shattered. Marcus's guilt was a weight on his chest. His family had become collateral in Holt's vendetta, a racist crusade disguised as lawful justice. The Pentagon, where he had served for decades, offered no lifeline. A vague public statement from General Ellis was broadcast. "We are reviewing Caldwell's status." Colleagues he had bled beside now distanced themselves, terrified of being tainted by the scandal. Marcus's legacy, built through hardship and honor, was collapsing, and Holt was savoring every second. In solitary, time lost meaning. The dim light never changed. Marcus paced, 3 steps forward, 3 back, his thoughts a war zone. The drug charge was a final blow, a mark no judge would overlook, especially not Harrove, Holt's puppet on the bench. Aisha's video had sparked hope, but hope was fragile in this place. Through the vent, the TV from the guard station crackled. A new report played, Caldwell's violent past uncovered. The anchor said, referencing anonymous sources tied to Holt, lies stacked upon lies, each heavier than the last. Marcus thought of his first deployment, a young black soldier from Chicago proving himself to skeptical comrades. He'd faced suspicion and bigotry, but never this, a system turning his very identity into a weapon. Lena's call replayed in his mind. Her strength was his foundation. He had made her, and Aisha, a promise. He would return. But Holt's conspiracy ran deeper than he'd imagined. Through the whispers of guards, he caught chilling hints. "He won't make it to trial," one said, thinking Marcus couldn't hear. "Holt knows how to erase problems." The words weren't a threat. They were a sentence. Holt wasn't just after Marcus's freedom. He wanted his life erased, his legacy scrubbed. Outside, the protests roared louder. A riot was building. Through the vent, Marcus caught fragments. "Free the general," versus "He's a fraud." Glass shattered somewhere outside. The chaos surged. Holt's backers fanned the flames, turning crowds against each other. The radio buzzed with reports of injuries and arrests. Marcus's name had become a dividing line, splitting the city, splitting the country. In solitary, he had no phone, no attorney visits,
No updates.
Ellis Kendrick, his lawyer, was fighting, but Holt's grip on the system was relentless. The pain in Marcus's body throbbed. Every step tugged at his stitches. But he'd lived through ambushes. He'd outmaneuvered enemies. He'd survived this. The drugs were the trap. If convicted, he'd face decades behind bars, his rank stripped, his family shattered. Lena's voice echoed, "We're with you, always." He clung to that. His resolve hardened. The cell door groaned open, and Kessler appeared, eyes gleaming with malice. "Found something in your cot, Caldwell. Powder. That's a serious offense." Marcus stood slowly, voice steady as steel. "You and Holt think this is over? You're wrong." Kessler chuckled, but his gaze faltered just slightly. Then he slammed the door and walked off. Marcus sat back down, thoughts racing. The Sons of Liberty, Holt's network, weren't just a few dirty cops. They were a machine, well-funded, far-reaching. They had frozen his accounts, smeared his daughter, forged evidence. But every machine had a weak link, and Marcus had been trained to find it. He thought of Aisha, her bravery, her defiance. Her video had been a flare in the dark. Holt was trying to extinguish it with propaganda. But the people hadn't stopped believing. That meant there was still a chance. He just needed proof. The TV blared again, another jab. Caldwell's drug charges raised new doubts about his character. Marcus clenched his fists, pain flaring from his wounds. He had fought for this country, bled for it, and now it was betraying him. But he wasn't truly alone. Lena was still out there. Aisha was resisting. And somewhere, Ellis might still be an ally. The chaos outside was deafening. A city teetering on the edge. Marcus stood tall, his injuries screaming but his heart steady. Holt's plan to erase him was in motion, but Marcus was prepared. He had faced death before, stared it down and walked away. This was no different, just messier. The cell's walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick and heavy. But Marcus' mind remained sharp. He would dismantle Holt's scheme, protect his family, reclaim his narrative. The guard's radio crackled. Another update. Caldwell supporters clashing with the police. The world was watching, but Holt was moving faster, his next strike already underway. The darkness of the solitary cell was alive, suffocating, wrapping Marcus Caldwell in its grip as he crouched near the door, listening. It had been 7 days since the diner, 6 since the courtroom, and now, bloodied from the prison assault and framed with planted drugs. He knew Officer Daniel Holt's plan to make him disappear was nearing its final phase. The damp walls of the Georgia jail echoed with distant cries, but Marcus' focus was honed, sharpened by 30 years as a 4-star general. His khaki pants, ripped and stained with blood, clung to his legs. His once white shirt was now a shredded rag. But his mind remained a weapon, meticulously planning his next move. He remembered the guard's whispered warning from earlier. Holt's method of handling problems wasn't just talk. Marcus had overheard Kessler, the corrupt officer, mention a late-night transfer, an unofficial one with no paperwork, a silent death sentence. Lena, his wife, and Aisha, his daughter, were still out there, facing threats and eviction, their lives unraveling because of him. His heart burned, the guilt intertwining with his resolve. He had to escape, warn them, expose Holt, dismantle the Sons of Liberty. The cell door's lock clinked. Kessler appeared, flashlight blinding. Transfer time, Caldwell. Marcus stood, feigning weakness, his stitches aching from the Shiv attack. 2 more guards flanked Kessler, their hands gripping batons, expressions hard. His instincts took over. Every motion, every detail registered. The guards' postures, the hallway's layout, the van parked outside, it all became part of the plan. As they shackled him, he tested their grip. It was sloppy, overconfident. The hallway was dim, most inmates asleep. Marcus' pulse raced, but his expression stayed composed. A soldier's mask. They escorted him to a side exit, where a black van idled. His driver was just a silhouette.
No cameras. No witnesses.
Holt's signature all over it. As Kessler opened the van door, Marcus struck. Like lightning, he twisted, slamming an elbow into Kessler's jaw, dropping him. The second guard swung a baton. Marcus ducked, seized the man's arm, and threw him into the third. The driver lunged, a knife glinting in the dark, but Marcus sidestepped. The cuffs were a hindrance, not a barrier. A sharp pain tore through his shoulder, a gunshot from a now recovering Kessler. Gritting his teeth, adrenaline surging, Marcus tackled the driver and knocked him unconscious. The keys jingled in the ignition. Marcus grabbed them, unlocked his cuffs using a fallen guard's key, and bolted into the night. His shirt soaked in blood. The Georgia woods loomed ahead, dense and shadowy. Sirens blared behind him. The prison's alarm howled through the humid night. Marcus ran, his shoulder on fire, every step fueled by survival instincts. Stay low. Stay unpredictable. Use the landscape. He moved through the trees, underbrush tearing at his legs, his breath uneven but steady. Holt's men would come, not just guards, but the Sons of Liberty. Vigilantes eager to claim him. Aisha was underground now after the doxing. He had memorized her burner number. It was his only lifeline if he could find a phone. The trees thinned. A gas station appeared, its flickering neon sign like a beacon. Marcus stumbled inside. The clerk, a teenager, froze at the sight of his bloodied form. Phone! Marcus rasped, his voice commanding. Trembling, the clerk handed him a cell. Marcus dialed. Dad! Aisha's voice, tight but alive, was a shock of hope. "I'm out, but I'm hurt," he said. "Holt's men are coming. Stay underground." Her reply was cut off by static. The call dropped. Marcus cursed, vision swimming. The clerk stared, pale, as Marcus staggered back outside. The phone was useless now. Sirens wailed closer. Dogs barked in the distance. Holt's reach extended everywhere. Marcus plunged back into the woods, shoulder screaming, blood loss draining his strength. He thought of Lena, facing eviction with nothing but courage. Of the betrayal from the Pentagon. Of Ellis' vague statements. Of his colleagues' deafening silence. The jail's TV broadcast replayed in his mind. Caldwell escapes. Used as proof of guilt. Holt's sons twisted his breakout into propaganda, calling on the public to hunt him down. The truth was drowned in doctored clips. His 30-year legacy reduced to ash. But Marcus wasn't finished. He had fought for his country, bled for it, and he would fight again. The woods thickened, branches clawing. A stream shimmered ahead. He splashed through it, cooling his burning skin, masking his scent. Still, the dogs howled. Closer, louder. Marcus' vision blurred. His shoulder throbbed. The pain spread to his chest. He leaned on a tree, gasping, body failing. But Lena's face, Aisha's voice, kept him moving. One step, then another. Shouts rang out. Flashlights sliced the dark. His training screamed, "Keep going." But his legs collapsed. The ground rushed up to meet him. Blood pooled beneath him. His final thought was of Aisha. Her number. Her fight. He had escaped Holt's trap. But at what cost? The sirens screamed louder. Holt's men could almost taste their victory. Marcus' hand clutched at the soil, his will unbroken even as his body faltered. He had survived wars, outsmarted enemies. But this was different. A war on his very existence, his family, his truth. The dogs were near now, their barks the sound of death. But Marcus' heart still beat, defiant, refusing to give in. Comment number 1. If you're rooting for Marcus to make it out alive from this manhunt, hit like and subscribe to follow his next move, because the odds are heavily stacked against him. Can Marcus find refuge before Holt's vigilantes catch up, or will his escape end in tragedy? The Georgia woods were a pitch-black abyss, swallowing Marcus Caldwell's fading breaths as he lay wounded. His shoulder pulsed with agony. 8 days had passed since the diner, 7 since the courtroom. His escape from Holt's deadly prisoner transfer had pushed him to the edge. His torn khaki pants and ripped white shirt clung to his sweat-drenched skin, the earth beneath him cold as the grave. Officer Daniel Holt's vigilantes were closing in, their dogs howling, flashlights cutting through the pine trees like blades. Marcus's 3-decade military service, his 4-star rank, meant nothing now. Holt's Sons of Liberty had marked him as a traitor and a fugitive, and the nation watched, bitterly divided. His vision blurred, Lena's face, Aisha's voice, his only lifelines. Then footsteps approached, not heavy like the others, but careful, deliberate. A figure stepped into view, a black man in his 40s, grizzled and carrying the stance of a soldier. "General Caldwell," he murmured, kneeling beside him. Marcus gave a faint nod, barely conscious. "Name's Isaiah, ex-Marine. You're with friends now." Isaiah lifted Marcus's arm over his shoulder, half carrying him through the forest, away from the snarling dogs. A concealed truck waited nearby, engine humming low. Isaiah helped Marcus inside, and a woman behind the wheel drove off before the vigilantes could catch up. The truck rattled over narrow back roads. Marcus's head lolled with every bump, pain flaring anew. Isaiah pressed a cloth against the wound, blood soaking through. "You're safe now," he said. "We're part of the Liberty Network, fighting scum like Holt." Marcus's foggy but focused mind clung to the words. An underground resistance, comrades in the fight. They arrived at a secluded farmhouse, its windows dark beneath a canopy of old oaks. Inside, a makeshift clinic buzzed with calm urgency. A nurse with steady hands stitched Marcus's shoulder, antibiotics burning through his bloodstream. Isaiah explained. "The Liberty Network, a coalition of vets and activists, has been tracking you since Aisha's video went viral. Your daughter's a force. She's with us, hacking Holt's systems, exposing his Sons of Liberty. Marcus's heart surged. Aisha was alive and still fighting. But unease followed. Lena hadn't been mentioned. Isaiah's expression grew grim. Lena was attacked last night. Outside your home. She's in the hospital stable but under guard. Holt's men. Marcus's fists clenched, pain radiating from the fresh stitches. His family was paying the price for his resistance. Holt's cruelty knew no bounds. The farmhouse buzzed with movement. Laptops glowing, radios crackling. Aisha, hidden in a separate safe house, had cracked Holt's encrypted emails. They exposed plans to rig Marcus's trial: names, dates, bribes. The evidence was damning. But Holt's influence stretched wide. Local officials, even state law enforcement. Propped up on a cot, Marcus forced himself to think like a general. Assess the battlefield. Map the enemy. We need to leak this, he said hoarsely. Send it to the press, the Pentagon. Isaiah nodded, but just then, a young activist, Mia, rushed in, face pale. They hit our main safe house. Burned it down. Holt's men are hunting us. Marcus's stomach turned. This wasn't just about him anymore. Holt was dismantling the resistance piece by piece. The lights flickered, a warning. Isaiah issued sharp commands, the team grabbing supplies, preparing to evacuate. Marcus stood, unsteady but determined. His shoulder throbbed, but his resolve didn't waver. I'm not running, he said. If Holt wants me, he can face me. Isaiah gripped his arm. Not yet, General. We need you alive. They fled, Marcus riding in a van with Maya and Isaiah. The farmhouse disappeared behind them. Their new hideout, an old warehouse in a ghost town, rusted but fortified. Inside, Aisha's hacked files glowed on a laptop, proof of jury tampering, dark money fueling Holt's campaign. Marcus studied the data, committing it to memory. A secure line crackled. Aisha's voice came through, trembling but strong. Dad, I'm safe, but Holt's closing in. I found more. He's planning something big. Before Marcus could respond, the signal died, replaced by static. His chest tightened. Isaiah's radio buzzed. A frantic voice. They've got Aisha. Holt's men hit her location. Marcus's world shifted. Anger and fear clashed in his chest. They're demanding your surrender, Isaiah said gravely. Or she dies. Marcus's stitches screamed. His shoulder felt useless, but his eyes burned with fire. 30 years in war had taught him one thing. Never let the enemy choose the terms. He had buried comrades, endured ambushes. But Aisha? That was his line. His threshold. The warehouse buzzed with murmurs. Fear spread through the Liberty Network. Maya, her hands trembling, unrolled a map. They've taken her to the old mill, 10 miles out. It's a trap. Marcus nodded. It was a trap, yes, but Holt had made a fatal error. He'd underestimated Marcus. The Liberty Network was small, outnumbered, but they had resolve. And Marcus had strategy. He'd plan more with less. Lena in the hospital needed him. Aisha in Holt's grip demanded him. The Pentagon's silence. The country's division. Holt's lies. All of it fueled him. His escape had lit a spark. This was war. Isaiah handed him a vest, a pistol. His eyes were steady. We're with you, General. Marcus took the gear. His wounds howled, but his heart was iron. Holt's followers thought they'd won, burning safe houses, taking Aisha. They were wrong. Marcus had survived deserts, jungles, ambushes. He would survive this. He would save his daughter. He would tear down Holt's empire. The warehouse lights dimmed. The team mobilized. Marcus led the charge, his steps sure even through pain. The old mill loomed ahead, a battlefield waiting. Holt's taunt from the diner echoed in his mind. This town's mine. Not anymore. Marcus' determination burned like wildfire, consuming hesitation, fear, and agony. He was going to get Aisha back, dismantle the Sons, and reclaim his legacy. The van sped into the darkness, the team inside silent, focused. Holt's trap was laid, But Marcus was coming, and hell followed. Faintly, the news murmured from a radio, Aisha's video buried beneath deception. Fugitive Caldwell ignites unrest. The world watched. But Marcus wasn't fighting for the headlines. He was fighting for his family, his principles, his truth. That was his weapon. The Georgia night was thick, laden with heat and dread. Marcus Caldwell stood on the edge of a clearing, the rusting silhouette of an old mill rising in the distance. They were 10 miles from the Liberty Network's warehouse. 9 days had passed since the diner, 8 since the courthouse, and now his daughter Aisha was Holt's prisoner, a pawn in Officer Daniel Holt's cruel game. Marcus' shoulder throbbed, the stitches pulling against the blood-stained khakis and torn white shirt he wore. But 3 decades of military training gave him strength far greater than the pain. The Sons of Liberty, Holt's white supremacist syndicate, had demanded his surrender in exchange for Aisha's life. Marcus saw through the ruse. Beside him, Isaiah, the ex-Marine, stood grim and resolute. Hidden among the trees, Liberty Network operatives waited, their radios silent. Marcus' mind, honed like a general's, mapped the terrain. A single entrance, a wide clearing, ideal for an ambush. Holt's men were inside. So was Aisha. Her cyber intrusion had been the match that lit this blaze. Lena, his wife, lay in a hospital bed, the victim of Holt's goons. Her resilience was Marcus' foundation. The Pentagon's silence and the country's division over his name only added fuel to the fire. He had escaped prison, outlasted a national manhunt, and now stood at the brink of Holt's endgame. Isaiah gripped his arm. "It's a setup, General. They won't release her." Marcus gave a sharp nod, his voice unwavering. "I know, but I'm getting her out." He stepped into the clearing, arms raised. The network's guns aimed toward the mill. A blinding floodlight snapped on, and Holt's voice bellowed through a loudspeaker. "Caldwell, you're late. Drop the vest. And the gun now." Marcus obeyed, his pistol and vest thudding onto the ground. His wounds screamed, but he stood tall. Holt emerged with 6 of his sons, their rifles shining under the harsh light. Aisha stood between them, wrists bound, her eyes defiant despite the bruise marking her face. Marcus' chest clenched, fury overtaking fear. "Let her go, Holt!" he shouted, his voice firm. "You have me." Holt's smirk was sharp, his pristine uniform a parody of law. "You think you're in charge? You're nothing." The sons chuckled, but Aisha's eyes met Marcus, a silent signal. She was prepared. Marcus edged forward, calculating. 30 years in combat had taught him how to read his enemies, and Holt was too confident, too open. "I'll confess to everything," Marcus offered. "The knife, the drugs, all of it. Just let her go." Holt's eyes narrowed, temptation flickering. A confession would destroy Marcus publicly, guaranteeing Holt's triumph. But then Holt sneered. "No deal. You both die tonight." Rifles lifted. Marcus sprang into motion, moving faster than his battered body should allow. He lunged, grabbing Aisha and diving behind a rusted barrel just as bullets tore through the air. The Liberty Network returned fire, their shots deliberate, striking down 2 of the sons. Marcus shielded Aisha, his reopened wound soaking the dirt with blood. Holt charged forward, baton raised. Marcus met him head-on, his fist colliding with Holt's jaw with a crack that echoed. Holt stumbled, but his soldiers rushed in, raining down blows. Aisha screamed, kicking a son in the knee, giving Marcus a breath of space. Isaiah's crew surged forward, their gunfire pressing the sons back. But Holt's men were disciplined and relentless. Marcus kept fighting. His body weakened, his resolve like steel. He snatched a dropped rifle, firing cover as Aisha dashed toward the trees. But the ambush had been too well planned. A net dropped from the mill's roof, entangling Marcus. The sons closed in. He roared, tearing at the cords, until a rifle but slammed into his skull. Lights burst behind his eyes. Aisha's cries echoed as she was pulled back into the chaos. Holt loomed above him, face bloodied but victorious. "You lose, General." The network retreated, outgunned, disheartened. Marcus, bound and broken, was tossed into a van. Aisha was beside him, eyes still burning with resistance. The mill vanished into the night. The Sons of Liberty cheered. Holt's victory was absolute. Or so it seemed. A glimmer of hope had survived. Isaiah's team had captured the ambush on video. Maya's camera recorded everything. By sunrise, the footage was online. Aisha's data dump accompanied it, exposing Holt's witness manipulation, his funding trail, his cruelty. The video went viral. Millions watched Holt's men fire on an unarmed veteran and his daughter. Protests erupted. #Justice for Caldwell trended worldwide. Holt's superiors, under immense pressure, suspended him. But the Sons retaliated, online threats multiplying by the hour. Lena, recovering in her hospital room, watched the footage. She rallied people from her bed, her voice rising as a symbol. Marcus, bruised and caged, clung to every sliver of news that reached him through a guard's radio. Public demand surged. Free Caldwell. The Liberty Network had altered the narrative. But Holt's grip remained strong. Inside the federal jail, a fortress, Marcus sat with blood dried on his face. Aisha was held separately. Her safety was all he could think about. The ambush had crushed his escape, but the world was watching now. Holt's mask had begun to crack. Marcus' career, his stars, and his truth had taken a beating, but they remained. He had survived battlefields, outwitted enemies. He would fight again. Lena's courage, Aisha's bravery, the network's resolve. They were his army. The cell's walls seemed to close in, but Marcus' determination only intensified. A flame no prison could extinguish. Holt's suspension was a fracture in his dominion, and Marcus intended to wedge it open. The radio crackled with a fresh update. Caldwell case heads to retrial. Public outrage had forced the court's hand, but Holt's sons were already scheming. Their next move promised to be more sinister, more lethal. Marcus stood tall, his body battered, but his resolve unshaken, bracing himself for the conflict ahead. Comment "Justice for Marcus" if you stand with him. Like and subscribe to follow this unfolding battle. The truth is emerging, and Holt's empire is fracturing. Will this new trial exonerate Marcus, or will Holt's sons retaliate with greater force? The courtroom pulsed with tension, thick with anticipation and anxiety, as Marcus Caldwell faced Judge Evelyn Torres. For the first time in weeks, his wrists were free of shackles. 10 days had passed since the diner incident. 9 since his initial courtroom loss. And now, due to overwhelming public pressure, a retrial had begun. A new jury now held his destiny in their hands. His prison khakis were replaced with a borrowed suit, his white shirt long gone. The stitches in his shoulder and the lingering bruises from Holt's ambush ached beneath the surface, painful reminders of the war he endured just to stand here. Officer Daniel Holt, suspended but defiant, sat in the gallery. His Sons of Liberty supporters were dispersed among the audience, their gazes sharp and accusing. Marcus' 30-year military career as a 4-star general, decorated with valor, now teetered on the edge. His name had become a national fault line. The Liberty Network's viral footage of Holt's ambush at the diner, combined with Aisha's leaked data, had uncovered the Sons' jury tampering, forcing the second trial. Lena, his wife, sat in the front row. The bandages beneath her blazer spoke of her pain, but her poise radiated strength. Aisha, newly liberated from Holt's control, held her mother's hand, her eyes blazing. Her digital skills were still a weapon in this fight. Paul Kendrick, Marcus' attorney, stood ready. His wrinkled suit hid a sharp intellect honed for legal warfare. The courtroom buzzed with whispers and the scratching of pens. Cameras rolled. The nation watched. Judge Torres, stern and known for her fairness, banged her gavel, restoring order. Kendrick began his opening, voice calm but firm, systematically unraveling Holt's falsehoods. General Caldwell is a decorated hero, targeted because of his race. Framed with a knife he never held. Connected to drugs he never possessed. He presented Aisha's findings, emails that showed Holt's sons had paid off jurors in the first trial. Financial records linked them to corrupt local officials. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as Kendrick lifted the diner's knife. It had now been traced to the cook, a Sons of Liberty member. "This was planted," Kendrick said. "And we can prove it." The new prosecutor, Victor Lang, responded with intensity, portraying Marcus as a dangerous renegade. He assaulted Officer Holt, escaped custody, and incited public unrest, Lang claimed, his tone heavy with prejudice. Holt's allies in the gallery nodded subtly, their murmurs polluting the atmosphere. Marcus clenched his jaw, discipline keeping him composed. He'd faced gunfire in war zones, outmaneuvered insurgents. But this was another battlefield, where lies and truth clashed in an uneven contest. Kendrick summoned witnesses. A teenage diner patron, shaky but brave, testified. He hit the general for no reason. Her voice quivered, but she held steady. Lang's cross-examination was ruthless, implying she had a criminal background. Another lie disseminated by Holt's media machine. A Liberty Network member took the stand next, confirming the origin of the knife. But a thug from the Sons stared him down from the gallery, his family's home address already leaked online. Fear choked others into silence. Holt's intimidation loomed over the proceedings. Marcus caught Aisha's eye. Her nod gave him a glimmer of hope. She had dug deeper, finding messages between Holt and the cook. Proof of the frame-up. Kendrick submitted them. The jury leaned in. But Lang sneered, dismissing the texts as forgeries. The courtroom split, half the jurors believing Kendrick, the other half casting harsh glances at Marcus. Their biases were unmistakable. Holt's reach had tainted even this jury. Outside, demonstrators clashed, justice for Caldwell Chance colliding with pro-Holt mobs. Police struggled to keep order. Lena took the stand. Despite her wounds, her voice was unwavering. "My husband gave 30 years to this country, and this town tried to erase him." Her words softened the room. But one juror, a middle-aged man with darting eyes, took notes calmly. Too calmly. Marcus felt it in his gut. He was Holt's inside man, a leftover from the corrupted jury pool. The trial stretched on, grueling day by day. Kendrick dismantled the drug accusations, presenting Kessler's file and proving Sons' ties. But Lang struck back with a bombshell. Leaked Pentagon files, Marcus classified cyber missions, now plastered across hostile news sites. General Caldwell endangered national security, Lang accused. The lies twisted Marcus' legacy into betrayal. Chaos erupted. Journalists rushed out. The country staggered in disbelief. Marcus' heart sank. Holt's Sons had hacked the Pentagon. A brazen move and one that rattled even him. His covert missions were now media fodder. General or traitor? Lena clutched Aisha's hand. Both looked pale but unyielding. Kendrick countered, proving the leak originated from Sons servers. But the damage had already been inflicted. Jurors' faces hardened. Doubt seeped in. Marcus stood. His voice pierced the disorder. "I served with honor. Those leaks came from Holt's side, not mine." Judge Torres banged her gavel to silence him. But his words had landed. A few jurors nodded, their expressions shifting. The shifty juror, though, leaned toward another and whispered, his influence crawling like poison across the jury box. Closing arguments came, Kendrick's intensity clashing with Lang's venom. The jury deliberated for hours, the weight stretching into agony. Marcus sat, his suit tight, his wounds a dull throb. Lena and Aisha watched, their love his anchor. Holt in the gallery smirked. His Sons were ready for any outcome. The jury returned, the foreman's voice steady. "Not guilty on all charges." The courtroom erupted. Lena sobbed. Aisha cheered. Reporters scrambled. Marcus exhaled, relief flooding him, his stars restored. But the shifty juror stood, his face smug. "I was pressured," he said, pointing at Kendrick. "This trial's tainted." Gasps filled the room. Torres's gavel slammed down. A mistrial loomed. Holt's final card had been played. Marcus' acquittal teetered on the edge of collapse. The Sons in the gallery grinned, their plan unfolding. Lena's eyes met Marcus, her strength unwavering. Tisha's fingers twitched, ready to hack again. Kendrick whispered, "We'll fight this." Marcus nodded, his resolve solid as iron. Holt had struck, but the war wasn't over. The courtroom cleared, protests raging outside, the nation divided. Marcus stood, free but not safe, his truth battered but alive. Holt's sons were already moving, their next blow forming, and Marcus was ready. The Virginia air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves, but for Marcus Caldwell, it held only the weight of betrayal and danger. 11 days since the diner, 10 since his first courtroom battle, and now freshly acquitted in a second trial. He stood outside a safe house, his borrowed suit replaced with civilian jeans and a jacket hiding the scars and stitches from Holt's relentless war. The courtroom victory, hard-won with Aisha's hacked evidence and public pressure, had freed him, but Officer Daniel Holt's Sons of Liberty had struck back, their vengeance consuming everything Marcus held dear. His 30-year career as a 4-star general, his stars polished through sacrifice, was now a target, his name a battlefield. Lena, his wife, and Aisha, his daughter, stood beside him, their faces etched with exhaustion but unyielding strength. The safe house, a modest cabin tucked in the Blue Ridge Mountains, was meant to be a refuge arranged by the Liberty Network after the trial's mistrial threat. But safety was a lie. Holt wouldn't allow it. Hours after the verdict, as Marcus reunited with his family in a fleeting moment of hope, a bomb ripped through their Georgia home, reducing decades of memories to ash. The explosion, claimed by an anonymous patriot group, bore the sons' fingerprints. Their forums buzzed with glee. Marcus' heart shattered, not for the house but for Lena's tears, Aisha's clenched fists, and the life they'd built now reduced to rubble. The Pentagon, his home for decades, offered no protection. General Ellis, once an ally, had reinstated Marcus' rank but sidelined him, citing controversy in a cold memo. Colleagues who had once saluted him now avoided his calls. Silence louder than Holt's lies. Marcus stood on the cabin's porch, the mountaineer air doing little to cool his rage. Lena, her hospital wounds barely healed, packed supplies inside, her resilience a quiet fire. Aisha, her laptop glowing, scoured the dark web, her hacks exposing more of the Sun's plans. Attacks on Marcus' allies, smear campaigns, and worse. The trial had cracked Holt's empire, but he was a wounded beast. More dangerous now, his militia growing. Marcus' acquittal, meant to be a triumph, had been the spark to Holt's fury. The safe house's peace shattered at dusk. A distant rumble broke the silence.
Marcus instins, honet invazones, screamed danger.
He ushered Lena and Aisha inside, grabbing a pistol from Isaiah, the Liberty Network's ex-Marine who had joined them for protection. Headlights pierced the trees. A convoy of trucks roared up the dirt road.
Marcus, gut twisted.
Holt's militia, not police, their Sons of Liberty patches glinting under moonlight. Isaiah radioed the network, but backup was miles away. Marcus, Lena, Aisha, and Isaiah barricaded the cabin, their breaths sharp, the air thick with dread. The truck stopped. Men spilled out, their rifles raised, voices chanting slurs. Holt wasn't among them, his suspension forcing him underground, but his orders were clear. A megaphone crackled. A militia leader barked, "M.O. Caldwell, come out or we burn it down." Marcus' mind raced, mapping exits, weaknesses. The cabin was a trap, its wooden walls no match for fire or bullets. Lena gripped his hand, her eyes steady. "We fight," Marcus said. Aisha nodded, her laptop streaming the attack live, a desperate plea to the world. Marcus kissed them both, his heart a furnace of love and fury, and took position by a window. Isaiah took another. The militia opened fire, bullets shredding wood, glass exploding. Marcus returned fire, precise, dropping 2 men, but the Sons were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Isaiah's rifle jammed, a curse escaping as he dove for cover. Lena, untrained but fierce, fired a shotgun. Her aim was wild but enough to stall the advance. Aisha's stream hit millions, comments flooding, "Save the general." But the world's outrage was distant, useless against the gunfire. Marcus' shoulder, still stitched, burned with every move, but he fought with a general's mind, sharp as a blade. He spotted a fuel can in the militia's truck, an idea forming. He signaled Isaiah, who nodded, slipping out a back window to flank. Marcus covered him, drawing fire, his shots surgical despite the pain. Isaiah reached the truck, smashing the can, gasoline pooling. A match flared, and the truck erupted in flames, scattering the suns, their screams piercing the night. The distraction gave Marcus time, but the militia regrouped. Their rage doubled. A grenade arced through the air, blasting the cabin's porch, fire licking the walls. Marcus dragged Lena and Aisha toward the rear, their escape route narrowing. Isaiah returned, battered but alive, and they sprinted. The forest was their only chance. The network's van was hidden close by, their destination, but the Suns were fast on their heels, dogs barking, flashlights cutting through the dark. Marcus carried Lena, her leg injured by shrapnel, her breathing labored, but her resolve unbreakable. Aisha ran ahead, guiding them, her laptop left behind but still streaming live. The van loomed ahead, but the Suns were quicker, their bullets grazing the trees. Marcus' vision blurred, exhaustion clawing at him, but Lena's weight in his arms kept him moving. They reached the van, Isaiah behind the wheel, and sped off, the militia's trucks roaring after them. The chase was chaos, bullets pinging off metal, the van swerving on mountain roads. Lena slumped, blood soaking her leg, her face pale. Marcus pressed his jacket to her wound, his voice calm despite the panic. "Stay with me, Lena." Aisha radioed the network, her voice trembling. "We need help now." The militia's trucks gained ground, one of them glinting with a rocket launcher. Marcus braced himself, memories of his first command flashing in his mind, the soldiers he'd led through hell. This was his family, his fight, and he'd lose everything before he gave up. The van hit a curve, tires screeching, and a network helicopter appeared, its spotlight blinding the Suns. Gunfire from above scattered the militia, their trucks crashing, but not before a final shot hit the van's tire. Isaiah swerved, the van skidding into a ditch. Lena cried out. Marcus shielded her, his body a wall as the chopper landed, network fighters rushing to secure them. Lena was airlifted, her pulse weak. Marcus and Aisha were beside her, the militia retreating, but not defeated. Holt's sons framed the attack on Marcus, claiming he'd bombed his own home. Their lies spread through the news, Caldwell's terrorist ties. The world wavered, some believed, others rallied against. Marcus, in the chopper, held Lena's hand. His stars had dimmed, but his fight was far from over. Holt's militia had been bloodied, but their leader was free, plotting. The hospital loomed, Lena's life now the new battle, and Marcus' resolve burned hotter than ever. No ambush could quench it. The Georgia night pulsed with danger. The abandoned mills, their rusted skeletons casting jagged shadows, as Marcus Caldwell crept through the underbrush. His body screamed from wounds old and new. 12 days since the diner, 11 since the courtroom, and now, with Lena fighting for her life in the hospital after Holt's militia ambush, Marcus hunted Officer Daniel Holt to save his daughter, Aisha. His jeans were soaked with blood, his jacket torn, the stitches in his shoulder ripping with every move, but his 30-year military resolve, forged as a 4-star general, burned brighter than any pain. The Sons of Liberty, Holt's white supremacist network, held Aisha hostage in the mill. Their trap had been set after burning Marcus' safe house and bombing his home. Isaiah, the Liberty Network's ex-Marine, flanked him. Their small team of activists was spread thin, radio silent to avoid detection. Marcus mined a general's battlefield, mapped the mill. One main entrance, crumbling walls, a maze of old machinery. Holt's men, maybe a dozen, were inside, rifles ready. Aisha's life, their leverage. Lena's pale face, her bloodied leg from the convoy attack, haunted Marcus. But Aisha's courage, her hacks exposing Holt's empire, drove him forward. The Pentagon's betrayal, the nation's division, Holt's lies, they were noise drowned by his mission. He signaled Isaiah, his voice a whisper. "Cover the east. I'm going in." Isaiah nodded, his eyes steady, slipping into the dark, rifle raised. Marcus crouched, moving like a ghost, his pistol heavy in his hand. The mill's door hung ajar, a faint light spilling out, voices echoing inside. Holt's drawl cut through, cold and mocking. "Your daddy's coming. Girl won't help you." Aisha's reply, defiant, sent a jolt through Marcus. "Hell, I'll bury you." His heart swelled, rage and love colliding. He slipped inside, the air thick with rust and oil, his boots silent on cracked concrete. Shadows moved ahead, sons patrolling, their chatter laced with slurs. Marcus' training took over, 30 years of stealth and strategy guiding him. He ducked behind a rusted conveyor, spotting Aisha tied to a chair in the mill's center. Holt, pacing nearby, his pistol gleaming. For sons guarded her, 2 more at the perimeter, their radios crackling. Marcus counted 8 total, fewer than expected, but enough to kill. Holt's face, bruised from their last fight, twisted with hate as he grabbed Aisha's chin. "Your general's done. This town, this country, it's ours." Aisha spat, her eyes blazing. Marcus' grip tightened, his wound pulsing. He needed a diversion, a way to thin the herd. A stack of oil drums loomed nearby, their caps loose. Marcus crept closer, unscrewing one, the stench of fuel sharp. He tipped it, liquid pooling, and struck a scavenged lighter. The spark caught. Flames roared, the sons shouting, 2 rushing to the fire. Marcus moved silently, dropping one with a chokehold, disarming another with a swift strike. Their radios fell silent, but Holt spun, sensing trouble. "Spread out," he barked, his eyes scanning the dark. Marcus reached Aisha, cutting her ropes with a scavenged knife. Her whisper was fierce. "Dad, they've got snipers upstairs." He nodded, pulling her behind a machine, his shoulder tearing, blood dripping. Isaiah's rifle cracked outside, dropping a sniper, the network tightening the noose. But Holt wasn't a fool. His sons regrouped, their gunfire pinning Isaiah's team. Marcus handed Aisha a pistol, her hands steady despite the fear. "Stay low," he said, then charged, drawing Holt's fire. The mill became a war zone. Bullets ricocheted, metal screaming. Marcus flanked a son, snapping his neck, but another caught him, a fist slamming into his wounded shoulder. Pain blinded him, but he fought. His general's will a steel core. Aisha fired, covering him, her aim shaky but enough. Holt roared, his pistol raised, and shot. The bullet grazed Marcus' side, blood soaking his jacket. Marcus staggered but lunged, tackling Holt. Their bodies crashed into rusted gears. Holt's gun skidded away, and Marcus pinned him, his fist slamming into Holt's jaw, blood spraying. "Hey, you're done," Marcus growled. But Holt laughed, his eyes wild. "You'll never win." A son charged, and Marcus rolled, taking the blow, his vision blurring. Aisha screamed, firing at the sun, but more closed in. Isaiah's team breached the mill, their gunfire scattering the sons. Activists fought with desperate determination. Marcus freed Aisha, shoving her toward Isaiah, who pulled her to safety. But Holt broke free, grabbing a fallen rifle and firing. The bullet tore through Marcus' chest, and he collapsed, blood pooling beneath him, his breath shallow. The mill spun, Aisha's cries distant, but Marcus' mind held firm. Lena's face, Aisha's voice, his anchors. Isaiah's team overwhelmed the sons. Their leaders were shot, a fatal mistake. The remaining sons fled, Holt's scream echoing, "This isn't over." The network secured the mill. Aisha sobbed over Marcus, her hands pressing his wound. Isaiah radioed for medics. The chopper's roar drew near. Marcus' eyes fluttered. His voice weak, he said, "Get Holt. Protect Lena." Aisha nodded, tears falling, as medics lifted him. The mill faded. Lena's testimony, broadcast from her hospital bed, hit the airwaves hours later. Her voice was a thunderclap. "My husband fought for truth. Stop the sons." Congress listened. Arrests began. Holt's network cracked under pressure. The nation watched, protests swelling. Justice for Caldwell, a global cry. Marcus, airlifted to a hospital, clung to life, his stars battered but still shining. Holt's escape remained a shadow. His vow to destroy Marcus' legacy lingered, a constant threat. The network regrouped, Aisha leading, her hacks now a weapon. Marcus' chest burned. His life hung by a thread, but his fight lived on in his family, his allies, his truth. The mill's ruins smoldered, a battlefield won but a war unfinished. Holt's sons were wounded, but their leader roamed free, plotting. Marcus' heartbeat faint but defiant. His generals will unbroken, ready for the final stand. The hospital room was a sterile cocoon, its beeping monitors a lifeline tethering Marcus Caldwell to the world. 13 days since the diner, 12 since the courtroom, and now his chest was bandaged from Holt's bullet in the mill. He lay in a Virginia medical center, the weight of his 30-year military career pressing against his fragile recovery. His jeans and jacket were gone, replaced by a hospital gown, but his 4-star general's resolve, forged through decades of sacrifice, burned beneath the pain. Officer Daniel Holt, though vanished, cast a long shadow. His sons of liberty, wounded but not broken. Lena, his wife, sat by his side, her leg wound healing, her eyes a mix of relief and steel. Aisha, his daughter, stood at the window, her laptop humming, her hack still dismantling Holt's empire. The mill's battle had crippled the sons, but Holt's escape and his vow to destroy Marcus' legacy remained, like poison. Marcus' chest ached with every breath. The bullet's path had been a hair's breadth from his heart, but his mind was clear, mapping the war's endgame. The Liberty Network's footage of the mill, Aisha's data, and Lena's televised plea had shifted the tide, forcing Congress to act. Arrests swept through Georgia. Sons' leaders were cuffed, their funding traced to dark money. Marcus, though bedridden, was summoned to testify. His truth, the final blow. The Pentagon, shamed by public outcry, reinstated his full honors. General Ellis himself delivered the news via a video call. "You're a hero, Caldwell," Ellis said, but his eyes avoided Marcus, guilt flickering. The betrayal of silence, the Pentagon's earlier abandonment, still stung, but Marcus pushed it aside. Lena squeezed his hand, her voice soft. "You're almost home." Aisha turned her face fierce. "Holt's still out there, Dad. I found his manifesto online. He's rebuilding." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. Holt's escape was a wound. His sons, a cancer not yet cut out. The hospital's TV played Lena's testimony on loop. Her words were a thunderclap. "My husband fought for this country, and it tried to erase him." Protests swelled globally. Justice for Caldwell, a rallying cry. But Marcus knew victory was fragile. A week later, he stood before a Senate committee, his suit loose on his weakened frame, his chest wound a dull throb. Lena and Aisha watched from the gallery, their presence his strength. The room buzzed, cameras flashing, senators leaning forward. Marcus' voice, steady despite the pain, laid bare Holt's network. The planted knife, the drugs, the jury bribes, the attacks on his family. He presented Aisha's hacked emails, bank records, and texts, each a nail in the son's coffin. "This wasn't one man," Marcus said, his eyes sweeping the room. "It was a system, and it's still out there." The senators nodded, some visibly shaken, others skeptical but cornered by evidence. The committee chair, a gray-haired woman, promised action. By day's end, federal raids hit sons' safe houses. Their leaders were dragged into custody. The nation cheered. Headlines screamed. General vindicated. Hate group crushed. Marcus returned to the hospital, exhausted but unbroken, Lena and Aisha at his side. The Pentagon awarded him a public ceremony. His stars polished, his medals gleaming. Crowds gathered, chanting his name. Aisha's viral video now a symbol of triumph. Lena, fully recovered, spoke at the event, her voice carrying. "This is for every Black family targeted, every truth buried." Marcus stood tall, his wounds hidden, his heart heavy but proud. For a moment, victory felt real. The diner's slap, a distant memory. Holt's lies, ashes. But the shadow fell at midnight. As Marcus rested in a new safe house, a modest apartment arranged by the network, Aisha burst in, her laptop glowing, her face pale. "Dad, they leaked your missions. Classified files." Marcus' covert cyber operations hit the dark web. Then mainstream news. Caldwell's secrets exposed. The reports twisted his work. Missions to thwart enemy hacks into treason, claiming he'd sold secrets. The nation, so quick to cheer, wavered, some calling him a traitor. Marcus' stomach churned, the betrayal deeper than Holt's bullet. The Pentagon issued a vague denial, distancing itself. Ellis silent again. Aisha traced the leak to a son's server. Holt's final card, played from hiding. The safe house's walls closed in. Lena's eyes were wide with fear, not for herself, but for Marcus' legacy. He stood pacing, his wounds aching, but his mind a furnace. Holt's manifesto, posted hours later, confirmed it. Caldwell's fall is our rise. The sons will return. The words were a vow, a promise of chaos. Marcus' testimony had broken the son's spine. But Holt, a ghost, was rebuilding his hatred, a fire no raid could extinguish. The news blared on, pundits discussing Marcus' crimes. His reputation tarnished once more. Protests divided people, some rallying for him, others against him. The nation fractured. A new Marcus gathered Lena and Aisha, his voice calm. "We're not safe here. We need to relocate, start fresh." The network arranged a new home, a small town in the Midwest, far from Georgia's scars. Marcus, Lena, and Aisha packed their lives, boxes and aliases, but their bond was unbreakable. Marcus secretly funneled his savings to the network, funding their search for Holt. His orders were clear: find him. End this. Aisha, now a leader within the network, nodded, her hacking skills sharper, her determination a mirror of his. Lena, always his anchor, planned their new life. Her strength was the light in the darkness. They moved under cover of night. The safe house abandoned, their trail cold. Marcus stood in their new home, a modest house with bare walls. His chest wound now a faint scar. He looked at Lena, at Aisha, their faces, his reason, his fight. The world saw him as a general, a hero, a traitor. But they saw him, and that was enough. The TV flickered. A new report. Caldwell's scandal deepens. Marcus turned it off, his heart steady. He had won battles, lost friends, rebuilt lives. Holt's leaks had wounded him, but wounds healed. The network's reports trickled in. Holt's movements were traced to a border town. His son was regrouping. Marcus funding power drones, informants, a net tightening. He would find Holt, not for revenge, but for justice, for every black life targeted, for every truth buried. The house was quiet. Lena was cooking, Aisha typing, a fragile piece of work. Marcus stepped outside. The Midwest sky stretched wide, stars glittering like his own. He breathed deeply, his chest aching, but alive. Holt's manifesto echoed, an unfulfilled threat, but real. Marcus' fight wasn't over, but he had won this round. His family was safe. His truth was alive. He turned back inside. Lena's smile grounded him. Aisha's nod, a promise. The war loomed, but Marcus was ready. His general's heart unbroken. Miles away, in a dim motel, Holt watched a grainy feed. Marcus knew home in his sights. His face, scarred from the mill, twisted with hate. His fingers traced a new plan. His sons whispered, "We rise again." The screen flickered. Marcus' face frozen. Holt's vow a blade in the dark. The battle far from finished. The story of Marcus Caldwell reveals the brutal truth of systemic racism and the unbreakable spirit needed to fight it. A black four-star general, Marcus faced a racist cop, Daniel Holt, whose slap in a Georgia diner ignited a war of lies, setups, and violence. From a planted knife to drug charges, Holt's Sons of Liberty manipulated the system, courts, media, even the Pentagon, to erase Marcus' legacy. Yet Marcus' resilience, shaped by 30 years of service, never wavered. His family, Lena and Aisha, stood as pillars. Their love and courage defied Holt's hatred. The lesson is clear. Racism is not merely personal. It is a machine, manipulating laws, leaking secrets, bombing homes to silence truth. Marcus' fight, through jails, ambushes, and a near-fatal bullet, shows that justice demands sacrifice, strategy, and an unwavering belief in one's worth. Holt's escape and manifesto prove the battle isn't over. Racism rebuilds, adapts, and strikes again. But Marcus' relocation, his secret funding of the Liberty Network, and his family's resolve teach us that hope endures, even when victory is tainted. Every Black life targeted, every truth buried fuels the fight. We learn to stand like Marcus, not for glory, but for those we love, for the future we owe. Comment number 1. If you faced injustice and kept fighting, hit like, subscribe, and share to amplify this truth. Thank you for joining Marcus Stand. May you find the strength to confront your own battles.